If any of these questions apply to you, then you need to watch this video. First and foremost, if you're wondering if Bigrock is good or if you should unlock him or where he ranks among the hierarchy of Soul Leveling Arise shadows currently unlockable in the game, whether you should skip him and just wait for our boy Kaisel. Also, if you're wondering where you can use this guy effectively and which hunters to use him with, then again, this video is for you. We're going to talk about all of that and more. We're even going to rank these guys a little bit roughly, but you'll have to follow me for that. So make sure you watch as much of the video as possible. If you guys have unlocked Bigrock, it's been a few days. I decided to wait a few days this time around. How do you feel about him? Where have you been using him? Answer those questions at the beginning. Which teams are you using? I'd love to know. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. Let's start off by answering the most important question, and that is Bigrock good? I am here to report, yes, ladies and gentlemen, Bigrock is actually good. You know, the funny thing about him is, I don't know why, but when I first saw him, I read this as basic attack damage, and I just was in my head hella hating on bro. I was hella hating on bro. I was like, there's no way that's good, especially at this low number. Like, I was like, there's no, but then I read it again, I was like, wait a minute, skill. So, I'm here to report a couple of fun things about this. Bigrock, his skill bonus here does apply to weapon skills for Sung Jinu. So, for example, Westwind, ding, ding, ding. Plum Sword, ding, ding, ding. Really all of them, but those are a couple I wanted to shout out there. They are stronger with Bigrock as your primary shadow with his shadow authority applied. So that is very, 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 very strong. And now, obviously, it says basic skill damage, so it's kind of weird that it applies to those, but I guess the weapons have their own basic skill. Moving on, so it does apply to the skills that you select with Sung Jinu, whichever ones you have, and obviously your other hunters. Now, to answer the next question, which hunters is Bigrock going to pair well with? That's a fun one to answer, because really the answer is any hunter in the game. If we're being completely honest, he's pretty universal, just like the crashes and glitches in this game. Oh, okay, cool. I guess we gotta stop. I'll be right back. I was in a really good groove too. But anyway, like I was saying, pretty much universal, can be used with pretty much any hunter you want. However, just like Tusk or whatever, there are going to be shadows, or excuse me, hunters that benefit more from certain shadows. I believe Harper is probably one of those hunters. I literally just got her, but if I remember correctly with her skills and her kit, she is going to be really good. But the primary ones I do have experience in and know pretty well, it's going to be Mireille and Cha Hae-in. These types of hunters are going to be really, really good. If the character has access to the ability to spam any sort of skills, this all applies to Jinu too, but if the character has access to spam any sort of skills or reduces their cooldown consistently, like Mireille, ding ding ding, then they are going to excel alongside our boy Bigrock, and they are going to output a crazy amount of damage. But when we cycle back here, like I mentioned earlier, Bigrock is very, dude, the game, why are you not working? Why is this breaking every time? I'd like to take this opportunity to say that if you're new here, make sure you subscribe for more content. About 80% of viewers aren't subscribed, so make sure that you are joining that awesome winning 20% for more awesome content from me. So anyway, yeah, so Sung Jinu also, like I said, weapon skills is one thing people weren't really expecting, so I think that's a huge deal on this guy. Next question on the docket. Where does he rank in the hierarchy of shadows? So first thing I want to say, if you're not aware, every single shadow has a shadow's authority, and this is very basic knowledge, but bear with me. Only one shadow's authority is applied at one given moment. Like if you have your team built with all three shadows, you only have the primary shadow, the very one in the first slot has their shadow's authority applied to your team. So keep that in mind. Whether Sung Jinu's there or otherwise, whenever you build a team with a shadow, only one shadow's authority is active, and that is the character in the first slot. So, that being said, when we talk about the hierarchy, like I said a moment ago, the good news is this is a pretty fluid list, because sometimes Tusk winds up being the best shadow in the game, depending on what you're trying to do. Sometimes with some weapons with Sung Jinu, think the Phoenix Bow, whatever that thing, I don't have it, so it's extremely strong with core attacks though. If a weapon has a good focus on core attacks, or a hunter like Alicia has very high focus on core attacks, then this guy is the best shadow for that team typically. For the most part though, typically winds somewhere where we're looking at Egress as the main dominant shadow, because giving critical hit rate is something that'll never age out of this game. The only way he'll get power crept is if they do some sort of like combination critical hit rate and damage, or a better version of this, which, you know, they'll probably do at some point down the line, because that's how these games go. But for now, he is the most universal shadow in the game. I'd like to throw some shout outs to these other ones not named Bigrock that you can see on the left side. The thing with those guys is, for the most part, they are used as secondary shadows. They're not your Shadow's Authority type of shadows. This one looks good on paper, but unfortunately the bonus is just way too low. This bonus needs to be like 40% at least, I think. It may need to be 50%, but I can understand why they didn't want to do that. It's just far. It's actually a joke. It's actually a joke. Maybe if they decide to change shadows and let you have more than one Shadow's Authority at a time, then maybe, right? But really, it comes into question, like, why would you use that over the other ones, right? So that being said, there are other utility things that some of these other shadows can do, and shout out to these three because they were the ones that were here pretty much on launch. Blades came a little bit later alongside Egress, being the one that was on launch instead. But these characters have, or these shadows have, the extra bonuses to defense, attack, and HP, which some hunters scale off of these different things. Some hunters have HP as their way of getting their attack out. They don't use their own actual attack stat. And so with that being the case, that's where these guys could be useful. But again, we circle back to crit rate being better than that. Sometimes with certain teams, the core attack damage being better. And now we look at Bigrock, and it's like the basic skill damage also is better than that. So these guys are not going to be used as primary shadows in most, if not all, situations. But the good news is, like I was saying a moment ago, depending on what content you're taking on, which team you have, then your primary shadow is going to be shifting. But the point is, it's somewhere between these three characters, right? These three shadows. I keep saying characters. So here's the thing. I think that he is a meta shadow. I do think he's worth having. I do think he's worth upgrading. I do think he's worth obviously unlocking and using. So if we were to build a team centered around him of shadows, it would be him. We'd be taking Serby and we'd be taking Tank, and that's it. Why are we taking these two when I just talked about them not being great for Shadow's Authority? Well, that's because they have these awesome passive skills on their attacks here. Combustion, extremely strong effect. Defense down here, really strong effect, especially in content that's not Sung Jinu based, because a lot of times other hunters struggle to get defense down on the opponent. It's not very common as a debuff on the opponents currently. There's a fun one in here for stun for 1 second, but not really. It's very niche. And then you look at the other guys in like Blades and Egress, and they're doing like a bleed or an attack increase. Tusk is doing an attack increase. These things are okay, but you just would rather have the defense debuff or the damage taken debuff. And then we look at Bigrock. This is where Bigrock does not excel, for the record. If you were building a separate team, say, for example, with Tusk as the primary shadow, you would still use those other two, Serby and Tank, and you would not grab Bigrock because Bigrock, unfortunately, does not have any passives on his skills. He's just all damage, baby. That's it. He doesn't have anything in here that would make him more relevant. In fact, I think he's the only shadow that has literally nothing anywhere. Even some of these guys, like I said, have an attack increase or something. So, no, Blades, are you? No, Blades, you gotta have something. Don't do that to me. Don't do it. There it is, right? I was like, I know he has an attack increase. So that's one of the things that I would consider. So if you're building out a team, you would want to bring those three as your primary shadows and fill out from there. So to recap, we talked about all of the stuff that I answered in the beginning, but this is the last thing that I wanted to answer. And I've pretty much, if it wasn't clear through listening to the video, I've pretty much already given you the answer to this, but I wanted to just make it extremely clear. Without a visual, I have two tiers. I have meta and non-meta. Actually, you could really have three tiers, but it's kind of overkill. Meta and non-meta is the main three I've talked about all video, Bigrock, and then Tusk and Egress. You could probably make an argument that Tusk and Egress, until further notice, are on their own tier, but I'll include Bigrock for now. And then non-meta is going to be the other four shadows, with the caveat that the two defense decreasers and debuffers are the ones that you're really looking for as your secondary shadows, because if we flip the script and it's not about Shadow's Authority, then those two are S tier, right? Like they are tippy top of the totem pole because they've got the best skills to be used as secondary shadows. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then you're definitely going to enjoy this video that I did that's on the screen now, where I covered the best skills for Sung Jinwoo. So take the knowledge you learned from this video, pair Bigrock with the skills you're going to see in this one.